Reclaiming Timeless Ways underway. You're with us. Mike's here. I'm Simon. Welcome. Thank you. And Mike, what's the topic of discussion today?
Well, I'm kind of going to weave a couple things together. I know, leave me alone.
I was thinking of a rug instantly.
Weave a wug?
I didn't know you're
All right.
a weaver.
I'm not, but Elmer Fudd might weave a wug. I should have left before I arrived. And blame it on the wabbit.
The whole show will not be done in that accent. Or maybe it will. Who knows?
Well, all right, so my question today is, what is a thought? What is a thought? And along with that is, how do we honestly approach one another? So we're going to weave these two, like a loom has fibers going in different directions and they intersect, right? So we do a lot. You know, my conversational style is to go back and forth and bring things back, segue things and bring them back to the center when it seems like I'm wandering off in the desert and I'm never coming back. And then I return. Damn it, he's back!
He brought his canteen, he will make it back.
So the question, what is a thought? Well, what is a mind?
Yeah.
What is it? What is a mind? Here I am, and I'm in this room, and I'm looking at this. Somebody conceptualized.
Right.
Maybe there's 100 or 1,000 concepts that went into creating this. Remarkable.
Yeah.
The base, the knurling on this piece here so you can grip it, the tube, the way it's formed, the threading, this piece that can tighten and loosen, you know. This, which is a buffer to get rid of extraneous noises and protects the microphone. The power, the cord, I don't know about the electronics in there, but I imagine it's fairly complex. Somebody had to learn a bunch of things.
Right.
Where did the iron come from that created this base plate? And how did they form it? Well, they had to cook it until it turned into a molten form, and then it had to be pressed or hammered into this shape, and then machined, and then painted. That's a whole other science. And each one of these things involved thousands of thoughts.
Right. And I've never really looked at this microphone
Right.
or set up in such detail, Mike. I'm kind of like, but you're right. Like,
Yeah.
there was a lot that went into this. To me, it's, wait a second, I roll into work every day and there it is.
And my
I don't
microphone,
give it a second
there,
thought.
period, end
Yeah.
of story, right.
But somebody gave it a lot of thought.
Many people, there may be the cumulative value of over 100 lives, 100 thinking and creating and working lives.
Sure.
That literally 100 or more that went into this. How was this plastic made? Who decided what qualities were necessary and how much experimentation? This is all thinking,
Yeah.
right? And you think, how does all of that fit into this head?
Right.
And then a million times more than that. So you go, what is a thought? And then the next question, it was kind of like we were talking earlier about Moses or Dumbledore, right, or Harry Potter. What is a mind? And then I'll go back again, so we're segueing as we did earlier. What does it mean when we're created? And does that mean that God's nose looks like your nose or mine? I don't think that's what it means. I think that it means what we are able to do in terms of our moral, our emotional, our interactive, and our creative capacities, among other things.
Right. Being created in his image, you're saying doesn't necessarily have to physically mean his image.
Right. Right. I don't know if God is bald or if he has a thick head of hair or if hair is irrelevant to God's appearance.
Right.
I have no idea. But So the next thought that comes to, what is the thought, is the first question. The second question is, well, what is a mind? And then what does it mean to be made in God's image, like we just said? And then, well, in the mind is this creative force. So you think, like when I was a little boy, I remember looking up and up and up and up and thinking I'm going to fall backwards on the back of my head because I have to look up so high to see the top of the skyscraper in New York, the Empire State Building. It was 1,424 feet to the top of the Needle or something like close to that.
Sure.
And I mean, literally, you're falling over backwards to see it because you're right at the base of it. It's huge. And then we went in it. Terrifying to look down. Wow. Oh my God. It's like forever high. And so there was a moment in time before the Empire State Building existed. It didn't exist.
Right.
They hadn't even scraped the ground. They hadn't even drawn the rectangle on the ground where they were going to dig the dirt and make the foundation. Nobody had drawn up the plans. How does this thing work? How does it resist wind?
Right.
How does it hold weight? Right? How much of an earth? Because, there's always some seismic activity everywhere.
Right.
How is it when the earth starts shaking, and they get little earthquakes in New York, not maybe like in LA, but they get them. I think we had a 5 a couple of times, which is very noticeable, a big rumble. So all these things had to be in the
Yeah.
every last one of them, right? And then, what was it? I remember when they had that big earthquake in Mexico City, there was something called a period of sway, right? It's how far back and forth a building goes, and it's in relationship to its height. So I think the shorter the building, the faster its period of sway,
Okay.
and the taller the building would sway more, kind of like picturing an elephant's tail moving back and forth versus a sparrow. And if the buildings, as they had been in Mexico City, weren't built with that in consideration, they would beat each other into the ground during an earthquake. And they did exactly that because they didn't think about that. So that was like a good example of the 1,000 things that they did think about and the one that they didn't. And now they have this big pile of rocks and bricks, and so invention, it's like, what do you want to create? I want to create a big building where we can do business and show people things and have a museum or a school or whatever. And it has to be warm and clean and dry and cool and safe, right? So they asked about safety, but they didn't ask enough questions, right? So the mind was closed. The door was closed at some point too soon. And it's like, well, how stable is the ground? Oh, it's stable. It's stable because you want it to be? Because it's inconvenient to say, well, maybe it's not completely stable, or because it's, for an absolute fact. Are you going to build reserve into something, right? Or are you only going to give it its minimal capacity? So all of this resides within a constructive mind, hopefully. Or you have a building on the ground in rubble, like in Mexico City, or that big bridge that came down in San Francisco, Oakland Bay Bridge. Remember that? Mm-hmm. Wow, crazy. So when you ask yourself, or this gorgeous Formica and wood table, what went into making that? How did they make these patterns? How consistent they are. How durable is this? It's a remarkable creation. And this thing could live 100 years, right?
Right.
So all of that comes from the mind, right? So the mind looks around, it sees things, it says, I'm going to play with this, what can I make it do? I'm going to mix these things together, I'm going to make it cold, I'm going to make it hot. I'm going to stir a third thing into it. So when we explore spirituality, is it different or is it the same?
I don't know how to answer that, Mike. To me,
Great! That's fantastic. I love that.
yeah. I mean, I'm sure there's some experimentation with it, but
Right.
at the end of the day, there's so much unknown, but what we do know through the path of Jesus in his life, it's like there's a lot of absolutes, but there are still a lot of question marks.
Right.
Somebody once explained it to me this way, and I don't know if it's a perfect explanation, but it helped me in that moment. I was struggling with some
Okay.
things that had happened, and I just, like, how can God let those things happen, and this and that, and you know, we all have struggles. You pick a topic, you probably had a struggle.
Oh, boy.
And
Sure.
he said a lot of things, and I promise you it was a lot more glamorous than this, but this is what I took away from it. He said, do you really think that the God that created not all of this, every bit of what's in you, me, and everywhere and everything, and all that's in existence, and you were talking about this telescope that we're learning these galaxies beyond, blah, blah, blah. Do you think that you or I really fully get to understand that God? Absolutely not. And if you did, would that be a very mighty God?
Yeah, right.
If you or I could
Right.
understand him?
No, no.
And even the book of Job would kind of summarize that when he's on, you know, back and forth, and finally he gets his moment with God after he had sat there and chatted with his buddies, and Job lived this perfect life, so he thought, and did da-da-da-da. And God kind of said, well, where were you when I was making this and doing that? Okay, so he was kind of sarcastic,
Right, it was.
you know,
Yeah.
kind of an interesting read.
Right.
And
Yeah.
you should feel terrible for poor Job. He did endure a lot, and
Oh,
God
Yeah.
took care of him in the end, but he kind of said, okay, so you think you know what should or shouldn't be. Where were you in this moment, in that moment, when I was working on this, when I was, oh yeah, oh, I wasn't even in existence, yeah, you know?
right. And yet, some part of him was, because God says, I knew you before I made the world.
So in a sense, it is okay to question, I guess, is where I'm going with that. In fact,
It's essential.
yeah,
It's absolutely essential. And it should be a source of, you should be terrified and filled with joy at the same time, right? It's like, well, we've talked about how big, this connects the next one too. How big is it all? Well, we started off with, I'm the center of the universe. Well, I'm the center kind of goes the next step, which is geocentrism, which geo meaning the dirt. So the earth is the middle of all of creation. And then they went from the dirt, or the earth is, to the sun that we spin around. Well, that's really the middle of creation. They call that heliocentrism. And then they realized, oh, wait a minute, there's a lot of suns out there. They're not just lanterns that somebody hung on an invisible hook, which is an old belief. So we got all these other suns, and it's a galaxy. And how big is the galaxy? We don't know. There's a lot of suns. Hundreds, maybe thousands, maybe millions. Well, it turned out there was somewhere between 200 and 400 billion suns in one galaxy. But there was only one galaxy until they found out that there was two.
right.
Then they found out that there was like 5 or 10 and then 100. And they kept finding more. And I think it was about 40 or so years ago, they had found billions of galaxies. Light travels 6 trillion miles in a year. So our galaxy is kind of built like 2 dishes stacked together. It's 100,000 light years across. And I was like,
Yeah.
please,
Yeah.
stop,
Yeah.
you know? And
How
10,
do you even fathom?
you don't. And it's like a double discus, right? And then it's 10,000 light years thick, like a big sandwich, like a Big Mac, right? Maybe 400 billion stars. But then we find out, it turns out, back like 30 years ago, they figured out there was about 400 billion organized groups of stars, each one called a galaxy. Hello. But that was all wrong, because the telescopes weren't seeing what was really there. They were just seeing through a mist of dust, right, and background light. Then they found out there was 1 trillion and then 2 trillion, and 2 trillion was kind of like the most ridiculous thing imaginable, except now they're saying somewhere between 6 and 7 and 20 trillion. And this guy, Brian Cox, I think he's a British physicist, he says that if you took a piece of paper the size of the room and you put a pencil dot, I'm paraphrasing, in one corner, he says the 20 trillion galaxies that we can see, that's that pencil dot in that far corner.
Right.
And he goes ahead and he says, I'm not sure if there's a God, but I'm certainly not sure that there isn't one. Open. His door is open, right? Interesting. He says, very well could be without end, infinite, right? So now you ask yourself, back to that first, we segue back to that first question, what is a thought? What is my mind? What is it? How does it gather all this up? Where does it begin? Did my mind begin with my body? Did my mind begin with my body, or did it precede it? Is my mind limited to my brain? Is it? Where is my consciousness? Where is the physical address of my consciousness? A lot of people, more and more, like every single day, like smart people with like letters all over the wall, they're going, it's not just between your ears. It occupies more space than that. And, you know, so then you get back to that little thing, that hint that God gave us, I knew you before I made the world. That means I was before I was. How was that? So, you know, it should give us, it can terrify us if we wanted to. I mean, we can just go and have a shit fit of fear and anxiety, or we can say, wow, can I learn something about this? Just one little dot of information that I can wrap my hands around, kind of like a kid swinging higher on a swing, you know? And so when we talk about faith, right, which of course is a conversation between the heart and the mind and our awe and wanting to connect to our source, I think the thing to do is to leave most of the theology alone, because it's like a point from which we spar in a sort of an irritable way, and say something like this: we are seeking the sacred. Now, does that mean that I neutralize and abandon my basic theological point of view? No. It means that I'm trying to help myself and another person find constructive common ground so we can go a little tiny movement from the general towards the specific and not lose the connection and the awe that's there. You know?
Interesting.
Yeah, that way I can talk to a Jehovah's Witness about Jesus, and they don't see him the same way I do. Nor does a Mormon, nor does a Hindu, or a Buddhist. Some Buddhists believe in God, others do not. Some are theistic, some are not. And you can say, well, can we agree that we're both seeking the sacred and the source of it and to somehow know it better and to compare scripture and experience and without being fearful about people's opinion of us in our group, to just try to get one little connection closer, you know? Like, why is it that if you're hurting, if I have a gift of laying on of hands, what is happening if I move my hand over your hand and the pain lessens or leaves? What is that? Right? Where did language come from? You know? Somebody somewhere, of course there were no pens, but let's assume there was a piece of coal and we called it bip, or what, it's always a bip. Somebody says, what? Bip, right? So now we have an object with a name. Now the name resides in my mind, and now I say, pick, bip, object and action, right? Now what's happening? The mind is forming language. Now the question arises, where does the inspiration to do that come from? Did it simply arise spontaneously within me, or was it inspired from a higher source? I don't know. But I love considering it, you know? I love considering it. And I think one thing that you keep, when you listen to all these physicists, these people with like doctoral degrees and postdoctoral degrees, and these astronomers and these astrophysicists and these biologists and all these other people who, you know, I mean, they probably have 100 times my knowledge or more. And they all are basically coming to one thought. It's intelligently designed. What is intelligence? What is mind? What is thought, right? So we're getting right back to that core, right? This didn't just happen. Didn't just happen. So that brings us to this very honest, awe-inspired state of wanting to seek the source. Say, oh, okay, so I think I understand that there is a creator. I don't care what you call him. I like what Mr. Spock said when somebody asked him what his real name was. He said you couldn't possibly pronounce it. So now, if you couldn't pronounce Spock's name, what about God's name, right? Might it be more difficult? Could be. Could be. But the thing is, when we do it like that, and when we look at the big puzzle, you know, like you just look at something, quote, small like this, and you ask yourself, where did all these parts arise from? These are all functions of thought and experimentation and years and years of effort, and finally combining all that. Well, and then you shrink back, like if you're a camera, a conscious camera, and you shrink back into a bigger view, and then you look at all this. Now all of a sudden, this is less than 1,000th of the room. And you see thought and creativity and focus and organization and cooperation and intelligent design in everything. Everything. And then you say, and all of this, which is 1,000 or more times that, is less complicated than one cell, literally, in my body. Less, much less. You think, there's this profound, inconceivable, and sacred intelligent source from which everything arises. And that should give us some sort of a sense of peace, that we're not lost in creation, that we're included in it, that we were created intentionally, you know? And I think that should be like, if somebody is experiencing existential angst, like, God, what does it all mean? That should maybe quiet one's spirit a little bit.
There is certainly a lot of thought, but you did shrink it down simply.
I'm
It
trying.
is, we're intentional.
Huh?
And it is absolutely that we're intentional.
Yeah,
I don't know how you can look at it all and say that that wouldn't be true.
right. Right. Or, or you can even make it small, like this. This is remarkable. Take apart a pen one day and start contemplating the parts of the pen. Like the ball, how was that made? How is it placed inside the cartridge? So it flows ink, but it doesn't leak ink.
Yeah.
And it does it with profound precision.
Right.
I don't think that existed 75 years ago.
Right.
I think that's about how new it is. Or a spring. How the hell does a spring work? Why does it work? Who invested how many thousands of hours playing with metal before they figured that out, So like we're all kids in a sandbox
Yeah.
playing with things, and that's a good thing. But the whole thing, is there's an immense amount of time and cooperative effort that went into slowly putting this multi-dimensional puzzle together, both the part that we constructed and the part that pre-existed. And the funny thing, it's a funny thought, everything that we have comes from dirt.
Yeah.
Everything in here, dirt. This is dirt. It's all dirt. We looked at the dirt and we extracted different things from it, and we said, "Thing from dirt. What can I do?" And then we got more complex in our thinking and in our words and in our behaving, and when we started cataloging things, and we started, do you ever think of how incredibly complicated it must be to shove lead inside a wooden pencil?
Never have. I haven't had most of the thoughts you were talking about today.
Yeah, it's fun, It's fun because what it does is it's like it puts us back in a state of appreciation.
It really does.
And that makes our existence richer. And this gets back to the thing of hope, because when you look at that, you think, okay, I'm going through good, not good, terrible, okay, good. But the terrible one kind of catches too much of my time attention, right? But if I look at the microphone or the pen or this, wow. How many Gronks ate how many poison leaves before they discovered that there was this one
Made
leaf?
pretty good tea.
This Gronk didn't die, and neither did his son or his grandson's grandson. So we all can get together and say, this Gronk makes life tea. Those Gronks made dead tea. Dead tea bad. This Gronk tea good. So it would be absurd, but so that's like an organized form of thought, right? And so when we start cataloging things as useful, you put a little bit of cayenne pepper on the tip of your tongue when you have a nosebleed, and it stops the blood. How did that happen? Infinitely complex, intentional, intelligent design. And you think, oh, and then you get back to that same thought again. I was intentionally created and included in all of this. I'm not alone. I'm not alone. The universe isn't just tolerating me. It's embracing me. I'm a part of it. I'm created as an important and integral part of it. you know. Now, if I reapproach my spirituality or my, you know, religious thought that way, I'm intentionally formed with purpose and with value. Your whole existence takes on a different tone, really different tone. And I think when you have people that are going through mountains of shit, when you can remind them of that, not once, but maybe with 10 different, you remind them until they want you to shut up. You give them 10 examples and they're like, okay, you're right. And maybe they'll give you an 11th or a 12th one. I get it. So now that's begun to infiltrate into their dark thinking. So when you infiltrate light into dark thinking, it's no longer dark, right? So I think when we talk about sharing spirituality and ideas, that's why I like that book, Awakening the Buddha Within, by Surya Das. He was a Jewish kid from New York, and he did what a lot of Jewish kids did back in the 60s and 70s. He went to the Himalayas to find himself, and then he found some temple up in the mountains somewhere. And he started studying, and he became like one of these high lamas in their organized Buddhist tradition. I don't remember what his original name was, but he's a Jewish New York kid. So his mother they call him, the joke is he's like the Dalai Lama, but his mother calls him the Delhi Lama. It's funny, right? So, and that brings me to this other question, right? Because questions come from observations. What is humor? Why do we exist in a sea that is infiltrated, in a good way, saturated with humor? Where did it come from? Did it happen by accident, or is it an inspired part of our creation? Is it a gift? Was it created intentionally to bring us joy? Right? So you ask this, and it's like, so one of the fundamental observations is if this creates joy, does it restore hope? Or instill and restore hope? And the answer is obviously yes, right? So then you start looking at spirituality and religion and theology differently, you know? Is joy or humor anti-God? Or is it part of, you know, it's got a newborn baby and it smiles for the first time and everybody goes, ah, wow, right? Or a puppy and it locks eyes with you and it trusts you. You see trust, right? Or the first time the puppy does something ridiculously funny and the whole room lights up with humor and you go, I don't know what this is, but I love it. You know, your existence is infused with this. And then you realize again, none of this is an accident. Right? And it's like, I want people to understand that. And no matter what we go through, because in a world with free will and a partly fallen world, that there is joy, there is love, there is hope. And when we remember those things, we remember that they were not accidents, that they were created. They were woven into our existence just like we were.
Yeah, how often do we slow down and think like that? I mean, it sounds like this show was kind of a on and on and on and on.
Right.
And we could go on and on and on and on.
Good. And you become
Because think about your day, and that's what I'm doing, and every step along the way, and everything from the toothbrush and the toothpaste to the clothes to the vehicle that you drive to work to the building you're in. I mean, when you think about it all, Mike, stop to think like that. I don't know that I do very often, truthfully.
Right. More
of a go through the motion.
Well, you're
You
very,
forget to
you're very,
look
but
at just
you're
those
deep.
simple things.
But I mean, somebody could stand back and look at you and go, look at you like they might look at my father and say, profoundly and unstoppably productive. And that's part of your nature.
Right. I just,
So when you stand back and you look at the quality of each of these things, you stand back and look at the quality of Simon, you say, a very focused, intelligent communicator and endlessly productive. That's part of your essential God-created nature.
sure.
The very atoms in your being resonate with that as part of their intrinsic purpose, right? Think about that. So like if you think about the universe being a series of endless trillions and trillions and trillions of things that were each forged in a forge, like molten steel hammered into a very specific, unique, so you were forged in that living way.
Like Thor's hammer.
Yeah, yeah, right.
Forge in the little
Right.
dwarf island or cosmos, whatever.
Yeah.
It's fun to sit back and think like that.
It is, but it is,
So what is a thought, Mike? All of that.
right. We get to sit back and look and celebrate.
Yeah.
We become,
That's a good word. Sit on that one for a minute. To sit back and celebrate.
yeah,
Like all of that.
Mm-hmm.
The creation of this, and that's where your conversation started, like
right,
celebrate those things.
Celebrate.
Enjoy.
right. This thing, I mean, if you flip up that lid, which took a lot of thinking and working to create, and then you tap one key, right? And the resonance of the string inside the instrument and the way that, what is it? There's like a whole harmonics and what do they call it? There's a board in there, and I'm not catching the word. But it's like a sound chamber, and each one of those keys is almost perfectly tuned to the one before and after it. And remarkable.
Yeah.
Or a light bulb. When's the last time I stopped and looked at the light bulb and said, this thing really makes my life better. I'm so glad it's there.
Yeah.
So I'm allowing myself to be reinfused with appreciation or gratitude or joy or amusement or value, maybe a little bit of several of those things. But that word celebrate, I think, is, this.
Oh my. There's a lot in this little box. A lot going on.
Extraordinary.
Yeah.
They say you could buy like the most expensive set of encyclopedias, like a Britannica, right? Maybe a real fancy one, 100 volumes or whatever it might be, with all the added volumes. And what this contains dwarfs that. Right? Almost like countlessly.
Right.
Like the difference between one star and a galaxy. Right? So you can go in here and you can look up fission or fusion or octopus or whatever else you want. And I mean, I don't know how long ago did these really come into being on this level? A dozen years or
Yeah,
so?
good question. Good question.
I'm
I
not
mean,
sure.
They really started getting into the portable style somewhere in the late 90s, early 2000s. And in the last 25 years, what they have morphed into, incredible. I don't know when they, how fast they kept stacking and improving, but
Right.
I would say, yeah, probably 10-ish years ago, 15 maybe tops is when they really became handheld computers, if you will, if you want to look at it that way.
Yeah. So there's this piece of music. I'm going to stop this one with that. It's called Zarathustra, also Sprach Zarathustra. You know the music.
Okay.
It's a gorgeous symphony. Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant symphony. It takes a couple times of hearing it to get it, to begin to get it. It's written by Richard Strauss. He was a different Strauss than the other one who did the waltzes, right? Like, ba-da-da-dum, bum, bum. That was one of the waltzes. This is a different Strauss. So, in the story of Zarathustra, you got this guy, he's on the trail of knowledge. He wants to understand existence, like what we're talking about. So he's standing on this hill and he's looking out at the expanse of stars late at night, and, you know, when the stars are coming out and the sky is kind of blue-black. And he's standing there in awe and wonder and confusion. And then he goes through this whole lifestyle. I'm paraphrasing a very complex story that I'm not deeply knowledgeable. I kind of just read a little description of it years ago. So he's standing there and he's looking at this great mystery in awe and with no knowledge to speak of. So he goes on this vast exploration and he learns more and more and more. He learns math and astronomy and physics and plants and medicine, all this stuff. And at the end, he's standing on the same hill, looking up at the same expanse in awe, knowing that he knows nothing, but he's at peace with it, you know? And that's, I think, a wrap on that one. Yeah.
Thank you for joining us for this edition of Reclaiming Timeless Ways. Until next time, have a great day.